Okay, I just want to go over some main elements of APA documentation. This APA Quick and Dirty Guideline is in our Angel materials, and this does refer to an older book that isn't in use anymore, but it does bring out some of the key issues with APA. If you go down to where it says a brief description, you want to, in general, provide a signal in or an introductory tag, such as according to. You can either do a paraphrase, a summary, or a quote. A paraphrase is where you put it in your own words. A summary is where you also put it in your own words, but you're usually working with a larger amount of material. And a quote is where you take something verbatim from an outside source and you put quotation marks around it. The in-text citation is the citation that appears in the text. This is true with visuals or with text. You need a parenthetical citation or a parenthetical documentation, and then you also need a reference page. You always need a parenthetical citation, whether it's visual or text, and if you have one of those, then you always need a reference page. So on the instructions, most people did not have a reference page, so that's a problem when it comes to revising for the portfolio. On this sheet, there's several examples from the older book, but it still applies. So if you're working with text, this is an example of a direct quote where the outside material is taken verbatim. There are direct quotes given, and then the in-text citation is a parenthetical reference, which always gives the author's last name, the year, and the page number. Okay, and that is true regardless of whether it's a visual, a figure that you created, or it's text that you're using. No matter what, you need this parenthetical reference. Okay, and then if you're using a quote from an outside source and the author's name appears in the signal going into the material, then you don't need to put it in the parenthetical reference. You can just put the year and the page number. Obviously, with a visual, you usually, if it's something from the web, you don't have a page number. So this is just the basic principles. But let's say that you're working with a document in this class, the instructions or the mechanism description, and I've asked you to put a visual in. You always want to label, every single visual needs to be labeled, figure 1 or table 1, figure 2, table 2, and before it appears in the text, you need to refer to it in the text. So as you will see in figure 1, whatever, whatever, whatever. Okay, and then let's assume that, let's just put a figure in there. Okay, here's my figure 1. Now, I've introduced it in the text, and it's supposed to be helping the reader understand what's happening in the text. Your choice is to either label the figure at the top or at the bottom, but whatever you do, you should be consistent. So I'm going to label all of my figures, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, and I'm going to do it at the top, and I'm going to give this figure a title. Obviously, you want to give it a title that is relevant to whatever you're writing about. Okay. Once you give it the title and you label it, you also want to, sometimes, of course, with Word, if you make it so it goes behind the text, then when you do your wrapping, it's easier to work with, manipulate the visuals a lot of times. So let me go through here because I want to put my source. So if it's you just put author. PA documentation is always, and it's always got the author's last name, the year, and the page number. So let's say that I took something from LCC's webpage. Let's say that I'm going to be giving some directions on how to find a certain program at LCC. Let's say academic advising. Okay, it's not a program, it's a center. So let's say that I'm going to give instructions on how to find that. So I'm going to take a screen capture, and I want to show people that they need to click A through C. So I do my screen capture, which is control, for me on this computer, it's control print screen. here's my screen capture, and I definitely want to crop this. Okay, I'm going to change my title to be something appropriate. My source is author created, but I didn't actually make the visual. I created it, but I went onto the web page and took it, so I need to attribute that. I'm going to put 2010 because that's the current date. I want to have an arrow here in order to highlight whatever I'm trying to explain. So let me get an arrow. Color red. I want to make it bigger. Okay, so let's say I'm trying to explain something with this. All right, so I have my figure labeled. I referred to it in the page. I've referred to it before it appears. I have my source there, but this is not enough. I also need a reference page. So I have the whole rest of my text, but at the bottom somewhere, there needs to be a reference page. And then I need my full citation. I need the date that I retrieved it. I need the date of publication. I need the date I retrieved it. And I need some information about the home page. I mean, obviously, I don't have a single author for that, but when you don't have an author, the next best thing is the title to the page. There, so I'm good. And with APA, you want a hanging indent. So the thing to remember with anything in this class that you do is that any figure that you bring into your text needs to be introduced in the text and linked. So you need to refer to figure 1, table 1, or whatever you're talking about, and that needs to happen before the figure actually appears. When the figure does appear, it needs to be labeled figure 1, figure 2, and it needs to have this, at minimum, it needs to have a source. So if it's just author created and it's something you actually drew or made from scratch, then that would be sufficient. But if it's not something, it's something that you had to go and get somewhere else, even though you created the visual, you have to give attribution to wherever you obtain that material. In this case, it was Lansing Community College homepage. And then you need a full reference. Putting created materials, let's say that I had not used this particular one, but that it was just a homemade visual. I would still have something in my reference list. Okay, that's it. Thank you.